I'm Clara, and I never thought a single phone call could turn my world upside down. One crisp morning, as I stood on the rocky shore of Bar Harbor, Maine, watching the Atlantic lap against the docks, my phone buzzed with a call I'd come to dread. My mother-in-law, Victoria, was on the line, her voice sharp with a smugness that made my stomach twist. "They're all gone now, Clara," she said, words dripping with satisfaction, like she just won a prize. "I sold every last one of your father's boats to my friends at the yacht club. Got fantastic deals too. You should be thanking me for cleaning up that mess while you're off playing scientist." I gripped my thermos of coffee, the warmth doing little to ease the chill creeping up my spine. The boats she was talking about weren't just boats. They were my father's Legacy 7 research vessels he'd poured his heart into, each one fitted with custom equipment for studying Maine's marine ecosystems. I'd grown up on those boats, trailing him through summers as he taught me to love the ocean, to see it as a living, breathing world worth protecting. He was a marine biologist, a quiet genius, who'd spent his life mapping lobster habitats and coral beds. And when he passed, he left those boats to me, trusting I'd carry on his work. I was in Maine for a research fellowship studying sustainable lobster fishing to help local communities. The boats were docked just a few miles away, safe, or so I thought. Victoria's words hit like a rogue wave. "You sold them?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. "All 7. Oh, don't be so dramatic," she laughed, the sound grating through the phone. "They were just rotting at the marina, collecting barnacles. I did you a favor. My friends will actually use them cruises, parties, proper things. Besides, the money's already sorted. Cash deals, no fuss." I stared out at the misty horizon, my mind racing. Cash deals, no paperwork. My father had been meticulous. Every boat was registered in my name, locked down with security measures he had installed himself. Victoria didn't know that. She thought she could waltz in and sell what wasn't hers. "Did you handle the titles?" I asked, forcing calm. "The transfer documents?" She hesitated just for a second. "Oh, paperwork's such a hassle," she said, brushing it off. "Cash is cleaner. Your father was always fussing over permits and nonsense. Waste of time if you ask me." I forced a smile she couldn't see. "Thanks for letting me know, Victoria. I've got a research meeting soon, so I'll catch up with you later." "That's it?" she said, her tone sharp with disappointment. "You're not upset? Those boats were worth millions, and now they're gone." "Just like that, just like that," I echoed, ending the call before she could gloat further. My hands shook as I set the phone down, anger and disbelief swirling in my chest. Those boats weren't status symbols to be flaunted at her yacht club. They were tools for science, for protecting the ocean my father loved. Each one had a purpose. Victoria saw dollar signs. I saw my father's dreams. I took a deep breath, the salty air grounding me. My father had always warned me about Victoria. "She'll try to take what's yours," he'd said one summer, his voice low as we scrubbed barnacles off the hull of his favorite vessel, the Sea Sentinel. "She thinks money is power. Promise me you'll protect the boats. They're for the ocean, not her." I'd promised, and I meant it. Now, Victoria thought she'd outsmarted me, but she had no idea what she was up against. I dialed another number, one I knew by heart. "Harbor Master Maria, it's Clara," I said when her familiar voice answered. "Has anyone tried to move my father's boats?" "Clara, I was just about to call you," Maria said, her Maine accent thick with concern. "Some folks showed up at dawn, waving cash and claiming they bought the boats. I told them they need proper titles and registration. They weren't thrilled. But those boats ain't going anywhere without your say-so." Relief washed over me, though my pulse still raced. "And the security system? It's all active, tight as a clam," Maria said. "Your father's set up. Electronic locks, codes, the works. Nobody's moving those vessels without your authorization." "Should I be worried?" "Not yet," I said, a plan forming, "but keep the cameras rolling. I think they'll try again." I hung up and opened my laptop, pulling up the marina's security feed. 7 live streams flickered to life, each showing one of my father's boats bobbing gently in their slips. The Sea Sentinel, the Tide Chaser, all of them safe for now. My father had been a step ahead, always. He'd known Victoria's greed would surface someday, and he'd built a fortress around his legacy. I felt a surge of pride mixed with a sting of betrayal. Victoria thought she could erase my father's work with a few phone calls and a wad of cash. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. Back in my small rental cottage in Bar Harbor, I sat at the kitchen table, the security feed still open on my laptop. The boats gleamed under the marina's floodlights, untouched. But my mind churned with what I just learned. Victoria hadn't just sold my father's boats. She'd spun a web of lies, and I needed to untangle it before she caused more damage. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I replayed her call in my head, her smug tone echoing like a taunt. She thought she'd won, but I wasn't the naive scientist she took me for. I pulled up the marina's archive footage, my father's foresight guiding me once again. Every boat was rigged with cameras, discreet, high-def, motion-activated. I clicked on the Sea Sentinel's feed from earlier that day. There she was, Victoria, striding onto the dock in her tailored blazer, her friend Helena trailing behind. They approached the boat, Victoria gesturing confidently like she owned the place. Helena handed her a crowbar, and Victoria tried to pry open the cabin door, her face twisting in frustration. When it wouldn't budge, I froze the frame, my jaw tightening. She wasn't just selling stolen property. She was trying to break in. My phone buzzed with a text from my husband, David. Mom just called. Furious. Says you've got some fancy security on the boats. Why didn't you tell me? His words stung, not because of what he said, but because of what they meant. Victoria had gotten to him too. David was a good man, steady in his own way, but he'd always struggled to see through his mother's charm. Growing up, she'd dangled promises of wealth to keep him close, and now she was using those same tactics to drive a wedge between us. I typed back, my fingers steady despite the anger simmering inside. She's been trying to sell the boats since Dad died. The security was his idea, not mine. Check your email. I sent you the footage. I attached the clip of Victoria and Helena along with a screenshot of the boat's registration, all in my name. David deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Minutes later, my phone rang. Clara, is that my mom trying to break into the Sea Sentinel? David's voice was shaky, like he was seeing her for the first time. And Helena's with her trying to mess with the Tide Chaser's engine? Yes, I said, keeping my tone gentle. She told you I agreed to sell them, didn't she? There are no papers, David. She lied. She sold boats she had no right to sell and took money she had no right to take. There was a long pause, the kind that carries years of unspoken truths. She said you signed off on it, he admitted. Told me the money would help us, help me, start my own firm. I believed her. My heart ached for him. David wasn't like his mother. He worked long hours crunching numbers, dreaming of independence, but never quite breaking free of her influence. It's not your fault, I said, but we need to stop this before it goes further. The boats are safe for now, thanks to Dad's security, but her friends think they own them. They paid cash for stolen property. What are you going to do? He asked, his voice quieter now. Nothing rash, I said. The boats can't be moved without my codes, and I've got the footage. I'm sending it to Dad's lawyer. Victoria's friends might want their money back when they realize what she's done. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Victoria. I played it, her voice sharp and accusing. Clara, how dare you lock me out of those boats? My friends paid good money, and now you're making me look like a fool. You'll regret this. I promise you. I saved the message, another piece of evidence. She thought she could bully me, but every word she spoke was digging her deeper. I called Harbor. Master Maria again. Any updates? I asked, glancing at the live feed. The boats were still there, serene against the darkening sky. Victoria's friends came back an hour ago, Maria said, her voice dry. One of them, Helena, was waving a lot of cash, demanding I hand over the keys. I told her to take it up with you. They left in a huff, but I've got the cameras on 24/7 just like you asked. Thank you, Maria, I said, gratitude warming me. She'd known my father and understood what the boats meant. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Growing up, I'd idolized my father's quiet strength, the way he'd face storms, literal and figurative, without flinching. He taught me to do the same, to think 3 steps ahead. Victoria thought she was dealing with a distracted academic, but I'd learned from the best. I opened my email and started drafting a message to my father's lawyer, attaching the security footage and Victoria's voicemail. Here's the evidence, I wrote. Let's make sure she faces the consequences. The ocean outside my window whispered against the shore, steady and unyielding. I felt my father's presence in that sound, in the boats that carried his dreams. Victoria had underestimated us both, and I was ready to show her what happened when you tried to steal a legacy. The next morning, my phone was a battlefield of notifications, texts, voicemails, emails, all from Victoria's Yacht Club friends. They were panicking, their messages a mix of anger and desperation, demanding their money back for boats they thought they'd bought. I forwarded each one to my father's lawyer, building a case as solid as the granite cliffs of Acadia. I was preparing for a research dive, checking my gear, when Harbor Master Maria called. Clara, you need to see this. Your mother-in-law is at the marina with the police. I switched to the live security feed on my laptop, my pulse quickening. There was Victoria, her designer scarf fluttering as she waved her arms at the boats. Two officers stood beside her. Her face was flushed, her voice carrying through the feed's audio. Those boats belong to my friends, she shouted. They paid for them, and she's stealing them. I clenched my jaw, watching as one officer, a grizzled man with a tired expression, shook his head. Ma'am, we've checked the records. These vessels are registered to Clara. There's no evidence of a legal sale. But I have witnesses. Victoria snapped. They paid cash. Good faith purchases. The officer's voice was firm, cutting through her. Bluster. Cash for property that wasn't yours to sell makes this attempted fraud. Your friends might want to explain why they thought they could buy boats without titles. Victoria's face drained of color, her scarf slipping as she faltered. I couldn't help but feel a spark of satisfaction. She'd built her world on appearances, but now it was crumbling under the weight of her own lies. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Mom's crying. Says you're having her arrested. What's going on? I sighed, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. David was caught in the middle, and I hated that for him. I'm not having her arrested, I typed. She tried to sell stolen boats and got caught. The police are just explaining what she did. His reply came after a long pause. She said she was helping, that the boats were wasting away. I found cash at her house. $600,000. She said it was for my firm to surprise me. My heart sank. Victoria knew exactly how to pull David's strings, dangling his dream of starting his own accounting firm like bait. Those boats are Dad's life's work, I wrote back. She sold them for a fraction of their value. No papers, no rights. That's not helping. That's theft. I switched back to the security feed. Victoria was still arguing, but the officers were unmoved. If there's no documentation, ma'am, these boats stay put, the second officer said. And the security footage, your attempts to access them could mean more charges. Fraud, attempted theft. You sure you want to keep pushing this? Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she looked small, her confidence unraveling like a frayed rope. I saved the footage, another nail in the coffin of her scheme. My father had always said the truth was stronger than any lie, and he'd made sure I had the tools to prove it. A few weeks later, the marina was quiet, the boats bobbing gently in their slips under a gray Maine sky. Victoria's world, however, was anything but calm. Her yacht club friends had turned on her, their demands for refunds escalating into threats of legal action. The scandal had spread like wildfire through Bar Harbor's elite, and Victoria's name was now synonymous with fraud. She'd packed up and moved to a condo in Florida, her social empire in ruins. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in watching someone fall so far, but I felt a quiet satisfaction knowing my father's boats were safe. I was calibrating equipment on the Tide Chaser when David arrived, carrying a worn leather journal. Found this in the Sea Sentinel's cabin, he said, his voice tentative. It's your dad's. He wrote about the boats, the research, and my mom. He knew she'd try something like this. I took the journal, my fingers tracing the faded ink. My father's words filled the pages. Notes on lobster migration, reef health, and tucked between the science, entries about Victoria's pressure to sell the boats, her complaints about his wasteful research. He was always one step ahead, I said, my throat tight. He knew what the boats meant, and he trusted me to protect them. David nodded, looking out at the fleet. I never got it before, he admitted. I thought it was just boats. But reading this, I see what he was trying to do. What you're doing. He paused, his usual hesitancy replaced by something new. I want to learn, Clara, about the research, the boats. I want to be part of it. My heart lifted. David had always been on the sidelines of my work, buried in spreadsheets while I dove into the ocean. But now, standing on the deck, he looked like he belonged. Okay, I said, smiling. Let's start with a dive. We're cataloging lobster populations today. Nothing fancy, just data collection. He grinned, a spark of excitement in his eyes. Deal. As we suited up, I felt a shift between us. Victoria's betrayal had nearly broken us, but it had also cracked open something new. David was stepping out of her shadow, and I was starting to see the man my father always believed he could be. That afternoon, David joined me for his first research dive. He was clumsy with the gear, but his enthusiasm was infectious. As we descended into the chilly Atlantic, I watched him take in the underwater world. The swaying kelp, the scuttling lobsters, the quiet beauty my father had taught me to love. When we surfaced, his face was alight. I can't believe I missed this all these years, he said. Mom always said it was a waste, but this is incredible. I squeezed his hand, pride swelling in my chest. Dad knew you'd get it eventually, I said. He always said you had a good heart. Just needed to find your own path. We climbed back aboard, and Harbor Master Maria handed us towels and steaming mugs of coffee. Data looks solid, she said. Those lobster beds are thriving, thanks to your work, I said, thinking of my father. He'd spent his life fighting for the ocean, and now, with David by my side, I felt closer to him than ever. Victoria's scheme had backfired in ways she couldn't have imagined, pushing David to see the truth and drawing us closer as a couple. The boats weren't just vessels. They were a bridge connecting us to my father's dreams and to each other. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were building something together, something that mattered. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the Sea Sentinel, the main sun casting golden ripples across the water. The marina was alive with activity, new researchers bustling between the boats, their voices filled with excitement as we prepared for a major project. Thanks to the data we'd collected, our team had secured a grant to expand my father's work, studying not just lobsters, but entire coastal ecosystems. The boats, once targeted by Victoria's greed, were now the heart of a growing community of scientists dedicated to protecting the ocean. David was beside me, checking the sonar equipment. With a focus I hadn't seen in him before, he'd thrown himself into the research. Today, he was leading a training session for our new team, explaining how to calibrate the monitors. Your dad would love this, he said, catching my eye. All these people carrying on what he started. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. He'd be proud of you too, I said. You've come a long way from spreadsheets. He laughed, a sound that warmed me more than the sun. Yeah, well, you made it hard to stay on the sidelines. The fallout from Victoria's scheme had settled, but not without scars. Her friends, like Helena, had sent apologies. I forgave them, but not Victoria. She'd moved to Florida, her social standing in Bar Harbor a distant memory. She still sent emails, but David had learned to set boundaries. She's my mom, he'd said one night, but she doesn't get to control us anymore. That strength in him was new, and it made our marriage stronger too. We'd spent years drifting, him in his world of numbers, me in my world of waves. But now we were partners in every sense, united by the boats and the mission they carried. Mom called yesterday, he said quietly. Wanted to know if we'd lease the boats for her friends' vacations to fix her reputation. I told her some things aren't for sale, that Dad's legacy deserves better. I squeezed his hand, pride and love swelling in my chest. What else did you say? That I'm finally becoming the person he hoped I'd be, he said, his voice steady. That I'm with you, doing what matters. As we packed up, the boats bobbed gently, their security systems humming softly in the background. They were more than vessels now. They were proof that standing your ground, even against family, could lead to something beautiful. My father had known that, and now we did too.